Someone asked me about how should a singer deal with chronic dryness. Dryness in the voice, dryness in the throat. I guess we all get it once in a while if we have conditions that are where the air is very, very dry and so forth. But the truth is, when you get up to sing, you have to sing whether you're dry or too much phlegm and mucus, or whether you're dried out to the bone. You still have to get up and do the performance. And there are techniques that one should learn about what to do to keep the voice from getting so dried out. Or in my case this morning, too wet. Anyway, the idea is when you sing, let's try to keep it very simple contact. Do you want the entire vocal cord to close? Now, if I lower the larynx with muscles, it imposes that type of closure of the vocal folds, the edges, the glottis, closes like that, with a little bit of pressure, and the entire thing, the entire length of it, tends to close. And I get, so to get the vocals to vibrate, I have to give a little shove of air. If the air's coming out evenly all the time under control, you'll probably survive. Some singers do get nodules doing that, but it's not as common as the worst problem is leaking air through the voice. But as long as you don't leak and it's stopped up, then your problems, you have different kind of problems. You have incredible dryness, and of course sometimes trouble being heard. The voice does not project well, and they always say one molecule should touch another molecule, and you go and to try to convince someone that that's their real voice is, believe me, very difficult. Well, I've been singing like this all this time. When I was in college, I sang as a bass, and that's the way I sang. I lowered my larynx and clamped them together, and I sang like this. No, la la, on the night is falling. See, the idea is you make a woofy, throaty sound that the Italians call ingolata, which means in the throat, and the resonance usually doesn't carry worth a darn, doesn't go anywhere. It's way too back down in here. The whole way the vocal cords are supposed to vibrate is you're just supposed to let the edges touch. And that's why in the old days, the most important vocalist of all, probably for 200 years at least, was la messa di voce, which is like saying the pudding of the voice. In other words, it doesn't translate well. But what it is a crescendo, decrescendo. Now, if I start, I'm very limited in my dynamic range and effect. But if I start really small, the idea is to just touch the vocal cords and then set them in vibration. And then when you increase the pressure of the breath, the voice gets louder instead of getting thicker, and very often wobbles occur. People get, So there are any number of exercises that you can do that you should not do. You can preset, believe it or not. See what my voice is? So a lot of people preset and use that as a way of sustaining the pressure against the diaphragm and controlling. And it does not, for some reason, nobody knows why, it doesn't seem to react in the glottis. The glottis remains very free. The whole idea is to sing. So I made a video called Slender Singing. That's the way the word they use in Germany is schlank singing. Slender singing. So if I go, it's thick. How do I sing slender? So I keep my voice slender all the time. We don't want that big old thick sound that doesn't carry worth a darn and is going to start wobbling, especially in the high notes for men. But the ladies do it, they get also usually much more damage than the men do. Men tend to get damaged by overblowing. The women get damaged by pressing the vocal cords too tightly together. But it's not healthy in either case, believe me. Now, if I do a miniature cough, I get a reaction right here. The breath is behind me, so I can cough with it. So I breathe behind me. And then I go. For some reason, the reaction up here is. It doesn't clamp my vocal cords together. So that is one of the old, very successful vocal techniques, the one that Manuel Garcia II used, and I've worked with several singers who worked with students of Manuel Garcia, and they all used that miniature cough. It was the basis of the whole Lampredi school. I mean, of the whole Garcia school. And if you do that, you're pretty safe. You've got someone like, there's a way to make an action up here that will cause a reaction that leaves the vocal cords unclamped, like raise the soft palate up and forward. If I do that, for some reason, my vocal cords don't clamp. So all these possible ways to sing, if you listen to Hermann Prey, famous German baritone, he does the lift before it, where every time he breathes, he goes, and lifts it up and forward, and then he sings, see? And his edges of his vocal cords, the glottal edges, the glottis, remains free to vibrate and doesn't get all this vocal cord going. You had things like the glottal stroke. If I go my vocal cords are closing absolutely, and depending on how tightly, when I start looking for volume, they're going to get even thicker and the tone gets darker. And there it is. That's my famous bass voice. Anyway, the idea is if you do these little clamps and these little exercises and things like that, you know, you really get in some terrible trouble with the voice, and you really shouldn't do it. Glottal stroking has always been one of the worst. It's very easy to do. A lot of pop singers say the way, but they have microphones, so their voices don't have to carry, and they can rest also between, and if the voice gets irritated, they can rest it. And the danger is that you can sound like you're singing if I do that. And you realize another problem I have with glottal stroking is it brings my resonance down out of my head and puts it down here in the falls of mask, and the whole thing becomes nasal. And nasal sounds don't carry. They don't project well. You know, you have to be careful that when you sing and you use this principle of the megaphone, you do not use this principle of the megaphone and try to get your throat big and broad and yawn, all these things in the back, and then bring it into a little narrow spot up front. And people sing like that, of course, are inaudible and have constant vocal problems. They have to modify and cover like mad when they come to high note because they're in the singing room. I can't go up at all. If I can get it out of there, I can sing high notes. But if I'm stuck up in there, I have to modify. No, 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 no. I have to do something weird to be able to get the high note at all. And very often I end up in the wrong vocal category because it makes you sound a little bit, you know, artificially heavy because you go from one extreme to the other. So what we want to do, we want to work on this glottal stroke and find out why is it wrong. Let's talk about Caruso's explanation. He said when you hear someone singing the glottal stroke, they're singing too far forward in the throat. So if I go there it is. It's right there. So that means I have to go back in my throat, in my pharynx, in my point of phonation. It's got to move from the back. And one of the great singers of the modern era, Franco Corelli, apparently talked about that in master class. And he did what was called the Miller maneuver when he breathed. He did this. So he's singing behind the glottal stroke. So I can deliberately go behind the glottal stroke and go So if you do any of these things that affect the holding together of the entire vocal cord, you will develop tremendous dryness because you have cut off all of the possibility of the normal flow of the moisture, mucus, in the lining of your vocal cords. It gets absolutely, the whole thing gets squeezed and literally just squeezing the juice out of it. If you want to think of it as juice, just think of this as water, lymph fluid, whatever you want to call it. But something, there's a mucus layer that covers everything, and that mucus layer should be moist, should not be dry. And if you're not careful and you sing like this, or you're going to get dry. I mean, some real serious dryness. Now, if you're singing a dry climate, forget it. You spend all your time having to drink and moisten, when the problem the whole time is that you've eliminated the normal flow of fluid in your body that sends moisture to the mucous membranes. If I just touch lightly and they only buzz in one little place, see, and then the whole rest of the vocal cords are able to do their normal mucus flow, so you don't get the feeling of the dries. Sometimes it depends where you live. Where I'm right now in Washington State, everybody tends to have phlegm. Nobody is complaining of the dries over here because there's been smoke and there's been all kinds of stuff in the air, and we've had a hard summer that way. And it's a moist climate anyway. We have a lot of rain in Washington. Although the summers today's gorgeous, for instance, but a little smoky. So the whole idea is to find a way to go. Now, if you look at that tape I made called Slender Singing, I demonstrate ooh ah, ooh ah, ooh ah. That's one way. Here's another way. Ooh ah, ooh ah. Here's another way. Ooh ah, ooh ah. So the idea is to not get these things slammed together and so tight that they start preventing the normal flow of moisture in and through the mucous membranes. Most singers don't dare sing great big dramatic repertoire because they get in trouble one way or another. This is one of the ways that they get in trouble. Dry, pressed together vocal cords tend to stop the airflow, and you have to push the air to get it to go through, and then you've got another problem. Air being forced under pressure to go through here to make them vibrate can cause nodules and nerve damage and everything else. See? So if I go, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, now how am I going to get the air to go through there? La, la, I can sing that way, but am I in danger of driving the fluid, liquid, moisture out of my vocal cords? Yes, I am. So you see people doing that, and they drink a lot. You have to be careful with water. You have to be careful with temperature. All of a sudden you have a very careful singer who has to be careful all the time about what they drink and then eat and don't drink. If you can find a singer, the other extreme of this is and I've demonstrated that on a couple of tapes because it's one of the rehabilitation exercises you do for these sick vocal cords. You want to stimulate them and move them and vibrate fluid out of them that should not be there, and you want to vibrate them freely so that the moisture that should be there in the mucous membranes can come back. So you go, where is my support? We just did a videotape called, I forgot what it's called, but we have to look for what happened. What is the reaction when I do that down here? See that? See it down here. I'm going to keep that You today, I'm fine. And I'm just barely touching the edge of my vocal cords, and I'm letting this do the work, and it coordinates in a way that I can make sounds and actually sing rolls and things on that very light touch in my voice. When I do that, I don't have dryness problems. Might have some mucus problem. Those usually come from up here, though. And they drip down on the throat. You usually don't have mucus problems occurring down here. It either comes out of the chest or the trachea, or it comes from above and drips on it, see? So that's why if you use nose spray very often, if you're a real drippy and real wet singer, sometimes if you do things to dry you out a little bit, you can sing. I don't approve of any of it, and I'm sitting here drowning this morning, but I don't approve of taking all those things. I think you just wait and get your heart going, and if I do some breath of fire, see where it puts my voice? Once I get that little edge going, then the normal flow of moisture through the mucous membranes of my vocals will also help clean up too much mucus that's coming from somewhere else. It's not even coming from the vocal cords. So if I do that, see, then I stay there and I sing. I don't have to modify or do anything. It's not, some people say, oh, that's too open. Well, open is an action. La, 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 la. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing any action. I'm not doing anything in my throat. La, la. I'm doing nothing in my throat. It's like I don't have a throat. I did the master classes of Dame Ava Turner back in 1962. And all she talked about was the invisible throat, the invisible jaw, and the invisible tongue. She said, there's nothing there. Sing as if there's nothing there. Said, if you can't use this, you must use something else, mustn't you? That's logical, isn't it? Yes. And here I am 60 years later or something, and I'm still singing all day, every day at age 83, and I'm still using those principles that I was taught by the great singers, and she was one of them. She's on the Turandot. She did the Turandot debut, the premiere of the opera Turandot in England in 1923, and there are recordings of her singing, in Questa Regia, and the voice was like a house. And when I met her, she was like 76 or 77, and she still had an enormous voice, and as healthy as could be. So if I go, there are ways to examine that. Where's the reaction of that in my diaphragm? Oh, it's very subtle, but you can feel it. Just keep looking for it. It's right there. Not in my nose at all. The resonance has moved way up here, where everybody can hear me just great. And those of you who are suffering from like chronic dryness, it simply means that you've got too much vocal cord touching from front to back, and they're touching too hard. And you've got to understand, don't do this. That is not the voice. Do that. That's the voice. No, but there's no sound. You know why? Because I didn't breathe. What if I do this? Half right and half wrong. This is all right, but this is all wrong. I didn't breathe. Then what if I get a good breath under that? I can tell you, folks, I sang a lot of operas that way. A lot of them. And a lot of big theaters. A lot of 5,000-seat theaters. Eline Hall in Toronto was 5,500. Dallas Fairgrounds was in Texas was 5,500. Purdue University was 6,400. I mean, you can look around, look at these theaters you sung in. There were great big, some great big outdoor venues in Europe. And you never have any problem with being heard or the voice carrying if you keep it light like that. See, but this is pretty. Now, if you listen to great singers, a lot of them sing very light or speak very lightly. Or they speak normally. They don't talk like that. They never sound like they're trying to impress anybody by talking in their chest voice. I could do that too. Hello, how are you today? I could talk here if it'd be more impressive. I don't know. Hello, young person. How are you?
I don't like to do that, though. I'd rather get up there and go,
Ha, ha, and then let my breath do the work. All those muscles in my body. Are you kidding? Think what I got down there. Think all these things, these muscles that can help me if I keep developing in them and breathing. I go, ah. See? Why isn't that enough? Should be. Why do I want to sound like a baritone? I sang the bass, believe me, nobody could hear me. I sounded great up close. It was, marvelous young bass. Look at that, fantastic. Oh, you're going to be the bass of the future, blah, blah. Only problem was no one could hear me. One violin would play and say, where is he? Did he leave the hall? Where is he? He couldn't find me. So the minute I sang as a tenor, though, believe me, they heard me just fine. All right, so let's see if that doesn't make a little sense to somebody. And let's get that normal mucus flow going through your vocal folds. Okay? Okay, bye.